What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. As promised, today we're going to get stuck into the brake lines on this Ford Fiesta race car that we're busy with, and I'm going to show you pretty much how to measure up and take all the information you need to go and have your own brake lines made up, and then we're going to install them. Stay with us. Welcome to the How to Build Your Own Basic Race Car Build series, where I show you step by step how to build and race your own basic race car. This is based on basic principles that you can apply on most cars, which will give you a cheap but still safe option to go racing. Join me on this crazy adventure. Okay, so first things first, what I'm going to do is block the brake line. Now, I am not using this brake line again, so I'm going to use a vice grip on it. Obviously, if you're going to use the brake line again, make sure you don't do that. We block it so that all the fluid doesn't bleed out of the ABS pump. I've got my trusty brake line fitting spanner, wrench, whatever you want to call it. So we take off the line. Now, it's most likely the case that the fittings on either side are the same, but not always. So what we do now is we measure the diameter, the vernier caliper, and I'm getting to 10 millimeters, exactly 10 millimeters. And then what you need to do, you get one of these. This thing is called a thread pitch gauge, screw pitch gauge, whatever you want to call it. Now, this basically has little gauges that tell you the pitch of the gauge. Now, the pitch is from spike to spike or tooth to tooth. That's the distance of the center of the teeth on the actual thread. So what we're going to see is how far that is. So there's imperial, and I've got a feeling that this is a 10 by 1 millimeter pitch. So there's 1 millimeter pitch thread, so it should fit in relatively easy with no gaps, and that fits in real easy, nice and snug. So you'll be able to see if it doesn't fit. That is a 10 by 1 millimeter. Alright, so I've got a trusty notepad here. I've drawn up a sketch of the brake line. This is the chassis side, this is the caliper side. We're going to measure the length. So on the caliper, I have measured it is a 10 by 1 millimeter thread. And then what you do is you take a picture of the actual fitting. And the reason that is important is so that you get type of tapered edge that it is going to have to seal. That affects the type of fitting they're going to use on the actual line. So this has a flared fitting, and that's where it seals inside the caliper. You then screw the fitting back inside. So no one said this was going to be a quick process. You just nip it up, and then you loosen the top side. Now here you have to be really quick because that's not good. So it seems I'm going to have to engage caveman mode once again, because that nut or that fastener is completely seized inside of this fitting, this brake line. So it's unfortunate, but luckily I have a second brake line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this line, this hard line here, and try and put on a new fitting, re-flare it. Luckily I have all the tools without losing too much fluid and obviously picking up the issue with air in the line. So fun times. Hopefully you don't have to go through this. If you do have this issue, then I would suggest getting a brake specialist to come out, or take the car to a brake specialist for them to do the repairs. It's a bit unfortunate that we have this issue. So first step, take out the clip that holds the brake line in. If you know the correct method to taking off these clips, please leave a comment, because I'm kind of winging it. Just make sure it doesn't hit you in the teeth. The reason I did that is so that I could kind of get it away from the body, but it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to get it away far enough to get this trimming tool in there. So that means I'm going to cut it off with the grinder. Let's actually see, maybe I can loosen it with 2 vice grips. I'm not sure what you call these in other countries, foreign to me. Here in South Africa we call them a vice grip. Snap. Aha, we did loosen it. Wow. brute force did something. Haha! Success! But I must say, this nut is absolutely destroyed. I am going to use a piece of a finger of a glove and then a small cable tie to block the hole. That on there, we see the fitting is a flared fitting, so you can tell the supplier that it's the same, or take a picture. Okay, so there you can see that I have a cable tie on it, and the glove is basically covering and just stopping all the brake fluid leaking out. So the brake fluid is still coming out, you just have to be really quick now. So what we do, we measure it to see 10 millimeters, measure the thread pitch. The 1 millimeter pitch works perfectly. So we have ourselves another 10 by 1. So then what you do is you mark it up on your piece of paper, 10 by 1 millimeter. And then what we do is we measure the length. So then what I like to do is I measure the length with the tape measure, because it's got a bit of flex, and effectively measure from back of fitting to back of fitting, and that works out to be about 450 millimeters, 450 millimeters, and then you mark that down, 450 millimeters, and that's what you have to make your brake line. So once you've done that, you've got the lengths, you do the same for the rear brakes, drums, discs, whatever it is, and you basically copy paste, do exactly the same. You put the lines back, and then no excessive amounts of brake fluid leak out. And then you go to your supplier. A lot of them either make up brake lines using Goodrich fittings, or they crimp and get the lines made up, crimp the lines using hydraulic presses. So that's what we have here. We have a crimped set of lines. These are very similar to the lines that are installed on the BMW. However, these are a bit longer, but that's fine. It just gives us a bit more room to play with. So these are the correct fittings. It's a female on the back end, a male on the caliper side. If you want to see some more of this kind of content, please consider subscribing. Just click on the subscribe button, hit the bell, and you're good to go. Here you can see it's a female fitting on the chassis side. Take a picture with you, and then a male fitting on the caliper side. So once you have your lines made up, this is how we install them. So all the brake fluid in the world is now going to spill out. I'm going to try to do this as quick as possible to avoid losing as much as possible. So you could leave the flexi hose on the chassis side, and then first take it off the caliper while it's still crimped. That will give you the best possible, quickest time. Drop that down there, get our new brake line. Now this one does not have a swivel head on the caliper side, so we are going to turn it in first. And then a brake line is very similar to an electrical line. So you never want the fittings to be under tension or the line to be under tension. So you need to route it in such a way that it has available play, also so that when you fasten it to whatever the strut, you must also clear the wheel, that it has enough clearance for when it moves. I think what we'll do, we could also wrap this around like that. So now a couple important things to remember. If you leave brake fluid, puddle of brake fluid on a painted area, it will chew the paint off and basically act like a paint stripper. So you will always want to clean up whatever residual brake fluid there is, and there must always be enough slack in the line to allow for the wheel travel in while turning, and then also in bump and droop. So I'm just going to put a cable tie on here, and then Bob's your auntie. Obviously I'm first going to fix this brake line, but I'll do that off camera. So there we go. It's pretty simple. From here you bleed the brakes and get the air out of the line. Make sure that you use a good high performance brake fluid like I showed you in the previous video. From there you should have a good solid brake pedal. So that's that. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Take the measurements, take pictures of the fittings, especially the ends, the flared ends or Sometimes it is a banjo fitting. Then in that case you take the measurements of the bolts and the length and get as much information as you can. Pictures, everything. The bolt lengths, the diameters, everything. And then you take that information with you to the brake shop and let them make up the lines. Anyway, that's going to be it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you guys next time. Ciao.